Hello and welcome back to another one of my videos. My name is Aleisha and yeah, I am a qualified barista as a job and I am a vegan and yeah, all that good stuff. Today we're going to be talking about what is good coffee. All in all, coffee is about it's very much an individual taste preference thing. So what one person thinks is good coffee, somebody else might think is absolutely terrible coffee. But there are some general guidelines when it comes to coffee. So we're going to go over those. But to start off with, I'm going to talk about New Zealand coffee. So New Zealand is ranked 7th, or at least by this website. So New Zealand has some pretty good coffee. Although New Zealand and Australia have a bit of a rivalry going on, so the Australians will try and claim it, but to be fair, you'll find them in both countries and both are pretty good, and Australia is stealing New Zealand's baristas because they pay more. That's a pretty good sign that New Zealand baristas are up there in terms of Australian, and it's also evidence that if they can steal our baristas, they probably stole our coffee as well. So New Zealand and Australia have this type of coffee called a flat white. If you're familiar with a latte, which is it's a white coffee, it has an espresso shot, mostly milk, and then a very small amount of foam across the top of the coffee. A flat white is less foam than that. So yeah, it's pretty much just a milky white coffee, but a tiny amount of foam on the top. Also, you can get some pretty nice latte art as well. We don't blame the New Zealand baristas that go off to Australia. The cost of living here is ridiculous and you can get paid almost $5 to $10 more depending where you're working in Australia, so I have definitely considered it myself. Moving on, we're going to go in without too much detail and going into how a coffee is made and how to make sure you get the perfect shot and all of this stuff. I'm going to tell you what a good coffee is. So a good coffee is a coffee that is strong, or you can get all the flavour out of the espresso shot, but it isn't bitter and burnt. It's very, very easy to burn a coffee and you can taste it. So that's the number one goal. You don't want burnt coffee. The other thing is generally each blend has different subtle notes that they add in. So you can get chocolate blends, you can get Italian roast, dark roast, medium roast. There's so many different roasts. Sometimes they add hints of fruits and floral flavors and all of these. I personally cannot taste these myself. I'm not a coffee connoisseur or anything like that, but I do know that a good extracted coffee, you'll be able to get a hint of those subtle notes and you'll be able to taste the difference between the roasts. So people who don't like quite a strong coffee will have a light roast. It's not as deep of a coffee flavour, but it still won't taste burnt. If it tastes burnt, the coffee shot has been made wrong. The other thing with the milk isn't too hard. Especially if you go to a coffee place that doesn't have a well-trained barista, you could potentially just get the same coffee, but it will be, so a cappuccino will just have chocolate on top. They'll just do the milk exactly the same, which is not how it's supposed to be, but is how most places will do it, especially if you're just trying to push coffee out fast and it's super duper busy. But one thing you want to make sure is the milk is not scalded, because that will also affect the taste and the texture. Also, the last thing you want to do is take a sip of your coffee and burn your tongue. So scalded milk is when they steam the milk too hot and it can curdle the beans, and it's quite obvious when you pour it if you've scalded your milk. Lots of places will use a temperature gauge inside their milk to check they're getting it to the right temperature. I'll need to fact check this, but the perfect temperature should be about 80 degrees and then 65 to 70 for alternative milks. And last but not least, the milk should definitely be creamy and fluffy and gorgeous. Ideally you want small little air bubbles in the milk instead of the big ones, so it should be like a creamy, foamy, frothy texture, which is what everybody wants. So now that we know what a good coffee is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the types of coffee. So here in New Zealand, if you go somewhere, you're not going to get filter coffee. Unless you go to a specific American themed restaurant, you might be able to find some. But all of the coffee here is espresso. So it's espresso shot. It comes out of a machine. But there are different types you can order. I'm going to put a list up for you guys so you can see all the different types. Hopefully with diagrams. That's how I learnt. I each coffee is made up slightly differently, but basically the main types are cappuccino, latte, hot chocolate, flat white. You can also get different types like affogato, that one has ice cream in it. You can get a long black Americano, which are basically the same thing, but they just differ with the amount of water that are in them. And if you want filter coffee, go for either of those, depending on how strong you like it. But yeah, so that's all I can think of off the top of my head. So I think I already mentioned this in this video, but I'm not too sure. The flat white is a latte, but it's even flatter. So that's how it got its name. It's literally a flat white coffee. If you could, you would literally just have hot milk and water. That's all, not water, sorry, the espresso shot. The other thing is, so as I mentioned earlier, sometimes a barista, if they're in a rush, will just make all the coffees the same, and a cappuccino would have chocolate on top. This is because we don't do them big in a bulk. Each coffee is made as you order it, and one shot per coffee as such. Or if you order double shot, it would be more per coffee. So it needs to be made per coffee as opposed to like a big batch brew and then topping up your cup. But we do still have Starbucks here. Starbucks do use espresso. I'm not too sure what they use in the States, and they still have their refreshers and the frappes and all these other drinks and things. It's just not as common. There's quite a few Starbucks here in Auckland, but in Wellington I believe there's only one Starbucks. It just gives you an idea. There's so many other little coffee shops though. Lots of people do coffee, and anywhere you go you should be able to walk in and get a coffee. Even at a gas station they have espresso machines and you can order a coffee. I won't say it's any good, but you can order one. Lastly, I would like to talk about me and what I normally get when I get my coffee. So I have been baristaing for 2 years maybe. So when I am baristaing, when I'm on shift, I get unlimited free coffee. So that would be what I drink. However, at home, I live in an apartment with Connor. I don't have the space or the money to buy myself one of these espresso machines. Although they do have ones you can have at home. My parents have one, and I'll put a little picture of it for you. They're not quite as strong, and you're not able to make as good of a coffee, but it's still better than what I make at home. I'll show you what I use. I use instant dry coffee. I generally have iced coffees when I'm at home, so it's okay. I just add a little bit of water, add in my ice cubes, add in my milk, and I make my own vanilla syrup because despite being a barista, I still love my coffee sweet. So if I do want a hot coffee, I'll show you what I use. This is so bad. This is the coffee I buy. It's from the warehouse. It's the cheapest one I can find. It's like $5 for however many grams it is. It is New Zealand though. It's made in Kerikeri. And then if I want warm milk, I'll boil it over the stove because I don't have a microwave. So like in a little mini saucepan. And then I'll put it in this coffee plunger and I'll go like this. And it'll foam up the milk, but it'll make semi-big holes, so it's not like as good as a steamed coffee, but it's as close as I can get on a budget. So I'll drink it, and it's sweet, so nonetheless, it gets the job done. Now lastly, I just want to say that if you don't like coffee, don't worry about it. Coffee's not for everyone. I didn't like coffee before I started baristaing and making coffee and just being around it all the time. I also still don't like coffee if it doesn't have any sugar in it or any sweetness. So to each their own. If you like it, drink it. If you don't drink it. Connor doesn't like coffee. I've been convincing him to try because he drinks a lot of energy drinks, which I personally think are worse for you, but it really depends. And one of the main reasons I actually drink coffee is because it is a natural laxative. So I just, if I feel like, ooh, I'm feeling a little blocked up, then I'll probably make myself a coffee in the morning and it'll help immensely. But other than that, there's no real reason to drink coffee. Also, I found if I drink coffee for a week and then stop, I get really bad headaches. So I'm trying not to drink it every day, or occasionally, if the place I'm working at has decaf, I might have a decaf coffee. But it's entirely up to you. You do what works for you. And yeah, I hope you've learnt what a good coffee is. And I hope that someday you'll try a good coffee if you are American. Yeah, it's something new to most people, but if you come to New Zealand, make sure to get a coffee. I hope you've enjoyed. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon if you want to see more of my videos. And that is all I have for you today. So
every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days.